How are we all doing tonight? Okay, set that for live chat. Sorry for the shake. That might be a bit loud. Good evening. Welcome to our Tai Chi live class Thursday nights. Sorry about last week. Had company in town. Couldn't quite manage it. Today, we're going to talk about our basic Zhanzhuang standing meditation practice and some potential things you might want to use to improve it, make it better, last longer, be more relaxed. Strategies to get the most out of it. That's the plan for tonight anyways. And the number one thing that I'm going to start off by saying is, to a degree, we want to pay very close attention to setting our overall structure and get it as close as possible. That's going to give us the best, start into the practice. And then we want to forget about it as much as possible. We want to get past that point where it's like, I have this in just the right place, and therefore I need to hold it there, and I don't want it to move. Actually, I do want it to move. I want stuff to move, but in a very subtle way. So what do I mean by this? I mean, like, I can get into a pretty good horse stance, and I can sink my weight down, and I can feel, my center of gravity sinking in here, and I can reach around like I'm hugging a tree, and I can have my hands in just the right place in front of me, or so I think. But honestly, this shoulder here it's a little bit high, right? And so the first strategy to really get the most out of doing a practice like your standing meditation is to allow that shoulder to change. And what you want to do is, rather than go, my shoulder's in the wrong place, and go, and drop it down, and stretch it all out, and then try and put it back. Instead, what I want to do is I want to allow this change to happen in a very subtle way. I want my shoulder, I'll keep my hands a little bit lower on this, I want my shoulder to be able to go from here, and it's like, okay, that's just not in the right place. I'm going to let it relax, and I'm going to let that shoulder come down and start to drop. Now, did that shift my arm a little bit? Yes. Did my hand move a little bit? Yes. Right? But now I notice this shoulder here, that one's a little bit higher. So I'm going to let that one just go a little bit. Try and match the other one. Oh, actually it feels like that one's even a little bit lower now. And I can see this hand is a little bit lower, like my whole shoulder has dropped. Now this one seems high again. So I'm going to let that, okay, so it's not really quite coming down there, but there's a little thing in my spine. My spine might be a little bit out of place. So I just got to let that move a bit, change my spine so that my shoulders are now a little more level, and therefore my hands are a little more level. So that's strategy number one, is allow yourself to move. Don't give up, just allow it to move, allow it to change. And if your hand happens to go, and drop down, as long as you don't completely drop it, right? Drop, okay. And then slowly bring it back up to where you think is a good, happy place where it's supposed to be, right? And maybe the other one feels bad. Okay, just bring it back slowly and gently, and allow your body to change shape. You're not going to you're not just going to start and go, boom, boom. Perfect. I mean, maybe after you've been doing it for 60 years, Sure. But especially not in the beginning, you're not going to get it perfect. It doesn't matter how many little details, like you get, little markers, like, your knee has to be bent at a precise angle, and that doesn't go over the toes in any way, and then your hips have to be flat and at this particular angle, and your weight needs to be even, your spine needs to be tall, and shoulders need to be down, but elbows need to be up, but also down, and like there's just a lot of things to think about with this. So get yourself close and then allow things to change. Like that's the number one thing. Holding on to the tension, especially as it comes up, like you're gonna feel when stuff is out of place. Like anything you can feel, that is stuff that is out of place. It is turned on. It's working way harder than it needs to be. And eventually it's going to give up. And when it gives up, stuff is going to move anyways. Like it might just go clunk on you, right? Or crack, and all of a sudden your neck goes back into straight, something like that, right? So you really want to allow those processes to happen and just happen naturally, organically. But what we don't want to do is be like, everything is so painful, I just can't, and crack, right? If you're ever going to crack, make sure you crack slowly and in a Tai Chi way. Take one more deep breath, even if you're shaking and you're like, let it down, open yourself up. Shake, 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 all that stuff. Standing up, and just try and return yourself back to standing upright and straight, even though it might, look completely crazy and you're going, but try and do it in as close to a Tai Chi way as possible. Try and coordinate your breath with it. Try and just, allow your nervous system to calm itself down. Spend a bit of extra time here breathing. Let everything subside. Let the weight of your arms go. Like feel everything pulling down, keeping yourself up nice and tall and straight. It's going to improve your overall practice to just always be in that habit, to not drop yourself out of this and give yourself a little bit of a shock or anything like that. It's going to enable you to take more of the stuff you were working on, hopefully, especially the relaxation. You're going to be able to take more of that with you out of your practice session. So we don't want to go from, oh yeah, I'm calm, I'm relaxing, to all of a sudden just, and back to our daily lives, and we're all stressed and tense or anything again. So try and smooth the transition. So that's tip number 2. Tip number 3 is breathing. And I know this one sounds pretty simple. It's a lot trickier than it might seem, especially when the tension really starts rising, to try and keep your breath as calm and relaxed as possible. And there's a bunch of techniques for this. If you're into doing meditative type stuff, sitting on the ground and chanting or whatnot, you've probably done a bunch of breathing relaxation things, count to 10, get to 10, restart, count to 10, that sort of stuff. And all that is great. What I am going to encourage you to do is I am going to encourage you to turn on a metronome if you can, or if you have a clock that's got a second hand that you can hear like an audible tick to it, That is my favorite way of really calming and centering and focusing my breath. That is establishing a breathing rhythm. And I'm going to turn on a metronome here for a second. And I really hope the microphone's picking that up. Maybe I'll turn it up a bit. So I hope you can hear that clicking. Anyways, it's a metronome going 1 second pulses. So 60 beats per minute. Or like I say, if you've got a clock that's got a second hand, you can hear an audible tick, right? And then what I like to do with this is find my natural breathing rhythm. And what I mean by that is I'm going to count the number of seconds or ticks it takes to breathe in and count the number of ticks it takes to breathe out. So I might go in, out, in, out. So just for where I am right now at this particular moment, my most natural breathing in and out rhythm was to breathe in for 6 seconds and breathe out for 8 seconds. And whatever your natural breathing rhythm is probably the one to start with when we are doing our standing meditation. There is going to be another series coming on the channel that is all going to be about breath work and going a lot more in depth with the metronome and ways that we can use it and modify our breath, learn to control our breath, control our nervous system, all that fun stuff. But number one, as a tool to extend your sessions, get more out of your sessions, doing your standing meditation, is find that natural breathing rhythm and stick to that. So rather than have, a specific number that you're counting to, like an arbitrary, like count to 10 or count to 20, or, count your total number of breaths you take in a 10-minute session, never works for me anyways. I just settle into the numbers of my breathing rhythm. And this one happens to be 6-8. Right? So 6 in and 8 out. So I establish that while I'm standing up, and then all I do is I get into that rhythm and then use that throughout my standing practice. So when I go to start, I start by establishing that rhythm. So in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in. and finishing up. In, out. In, out. So some advantages to that one, it gives our mind something to latch onto, just like all of these counting practices do. I'm going to stop the metronome. Yeah, it gives our mind something to latch onto. It's generally speaking, it's going to be lower numbers than 10 or 20 or 100 or whatever you were trying to count to. You might even get two different numbers, which will give your mind something to just kind of oscillate back and forth between. Generally speaking, and there will be more on this coming later, but if you want to slow your nervous system down, you want to extend your out breath relative to your in breath. So something like I was doing there, a 6 in and an 8 out is slowing the nervous system down generally. That is usually going to be an advantageous sort of thing for doing a standing meditation practice like this. And yeah, it's another one of those counting practices, but I think it's a pretty practical one and a pretty easy one to do. It's sort of hard to mess it up, really, because you're counting to two fairly low numbers. The only things I would avoid doing is try and get very low numbers. Like if you're down in the 2 in, 2 out sort of thing, you are probably breathing a little bit fast for a standing meditation practice. And if you try and go for 20 or 30, you are probably going to pass out due to lack of oxygen. That's not going to be so great either. But as you become more and more experienced in breath work and breath related practices, you can definitely start going to further and further extremes as long as you have the ability to track yourself as you do it and make adjustments as needed. Nothing you want to jump into. So, number one, just go for your natural breathing rhythm. And if you're at all interested about further breath work and breathing exercises and things that we can do, subscribe to the channel, like, comment, all that stuff, tell your friends, and look for the forthcoming series on breath work. I might also try and get that one on TikTok too. I'm trying to figure out this whole vertical thing. Okay, so the next strategy I want to go over with you is the 6 directions. And this is one that really helped me out a lot when I was getting going. The 6 directions are essentially up, down, left, right, front, back. And I find those extremely useful for spending some time thinking about my joints. And like joints are like, if you're having shoulder issues, generally speaking, we want to create more space in our shoulder joint. We want the thing like as open as possible so there's little friction. Like when our joints start getting slammed together and they kind of like grind on each other, that usually causes us some fairly significant issues. And in Tai Chi, we're going to look to, like, if you got a ball and socket joint like this, we're going to try and pull the ball out of the socket a little bit so it's got some space there and can more freely rotate. So the 6 directions I find really useful in looking for that space. And this works really well for me in all of my joints. You can apply it anywhere to anything, but I really like it for looking for space in all my joints. And what I normally do is I will start off by figuring out what those 6 directions are. And for something like a finger. And I got a few joints here. These are fairly simple joints. They really only do that. They contract and they extend. So the first direction I might look for on these is length. Like that's the obvious one. So that's going to be my front back. So when I'm doing my standing meditation, what I'm going to do to keep my mind occupied and make sure I'm actively relaxing is I might do a little system where I start going through my body in whatever order strikes your fancy. But say I start at the tips of my fingers. That's where I'm going to start. And I'm going to start with that first phalanges joint there. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look for length there. So I'm going to get into my standing and I try and make that joint a little bit longer. Try and just open a little more space in there. I think about breathing into that joint, making it just go, right? And then I do the next one and the next one. So maybe I do it with every breath, like in breath, extend that joint. Next one, extend that joint. Next one, extend that joint. Next finger, right? And I can do this going through all the joints of my fingers. Then maybe I do it on my thumbs, right? Then I start looking at creating space on that thumb joint in there. And then I start thinking about creating space on my wrist as it want that longer, that more space open. Elbow, I want more space there. Shoulder, I want more space along there. And I can do this on this arm and then this arm, or both arms at the same time, or I could start at my toes, I could start at my head, I could work all the way down. But having a systematic way of going through and saying, okay, each one of these joints, my front back, I'm going to look for more length in every single one of those joints, right? And try and get them longer. I'm going to try and get more space into each one of them. And I just go through every single joint, like down my spine. I try and get space in between each vertebrae, right? Working my way down. Can I get space in my, SI joint there? Can I make that open up? Can I get space in my ball and sockets, in my hips? Can I get them in my knees, in my ankles, in my toe bones? Like just whole way down, right? So I can create my own meditation sort of practice, going all the way through my system in whatever order works really well for me, like that my mind would gravitate towards. And then once I've done that, I've done it in two of the directions. I've done it in my front back. Perhaps then I start going and looking for, what I would consider up, down, or left, right. Like doesn't really matter how you want to classify it. But again, let's go back to the finger here. Simple joint right there. Right? So last time I was extending it along the joint, going this way. Now what happens if I try and think about space that way? Right? I want to create space in that joint going that direction, opening it up in a slightly different way. Ooh. Wow. I feel that. That's cool. And then the next joint, right? I open that one in that direction. This joint here, I open that one in that direction, right? Go through each one of those joints in my mind and try and make them a little bit wider, right? So I've made each joint longer. Now I'm going to make each joint wider. And I go through, trace that one, that one, that one, into my wrist. How does my wrist get wider? How does my elbow get wider? How does my shoulder get wider? Yeah, wider shoulder in this case, probably front back sort of thing, right? Anyways, and then you work through all the joints in your body. Once you've done that, then you've got one more set of directions left. So we did front back and we did left right. Now we've got our up down, like our top, bottom, right? So how do I create space in that direction? And then do it on the next joint, and the next joint, and the next joint, and the next joint. And take your time with this. Again, this is just like something, it gives your mind something to do while actively going and relaxing. It gives us a chance to check in over our whole body. It is a practice that is going to take time to build up to the point where you could, just kind of go through every joint in your body piece by piece and go that direction, that direction, that direction, that direction, that direction. Working your way all down your spine, hips, knees, ankles, toes. And then you do the whole thing again from a different set of directions. And then you do another one with the last set of directions. And for me, this becomes, just a few breaths, really, because I just kind of trigger. It's almost like a chain reaction, like, they see like the fuse cord for a bomb going, right? It's kind of like that just starts firing off down all my joints, all the way down to my toes. And then I pick the next direction. And fairly quickly, I can go through the whole body, head to toe. And I can use that as one, I get into my practice, right? I get into my stance. And then my first few breaths are just hitting all of those joints all the way down, right? Working that a few times, scan over the body, get myself into a good position. And I can use it anytime, like my mind starts to wander or something, or I just notice myself sort of like coming out, cheating a little bit, and my form are like, oh, wait, no. Get back into that. Hit all of those joints. Expand them in all directions. Going from the head to the toes. And then I can also use it very specifically. Sorry, I'm going to turn on the music again. I can use it very specifically when there is a problem area. So if I get adept at going through those 6 directions, piece by piece, every joint of my body, great opportunity to learn all those different, connection points, learn your body, get us comfortable with it, find trouble areas and problem spots. But when I'm doing my standing meditation, if those trouble areas or spots all of a sudden start rearing their head, like they really start flaring up on you, like your elbow just all of a sudden starts going, because there's something out of whack in there. You can use that 6 directions to go to like the closest joint there. And these things usually do have a tendency to wind up in joints. Sometimes they wind up in longer muscles, but we'll get to that. But in joint areas, especially shoulders, stuff like that, all those, little clavicular bone joints here and there, and, all those little spaces that should be there, you can use that 6 directions to just pick that area apart, right, in every direction, and open it up, make it bigger, make it hollow, right? Again, always allowing these small movements, these slight adjustments in an area. Like if you're using your 6 directions to give yourself space on your shoulder, and it needs to move like that, your arm needs to stretch out, okay, and then settle back, right, into a more comfortable place. Now that something is moved and stretched out, great. let it do it. Let it do its thing. There is a strong tendency to think, I didn't get into the perfect position and I've got to move something, so I'm just going to let everything. I just failed, right? I failed. Instead of going, oh yeah, that's got to move. Oh, that's doing a thing in my neck. Right? You settle back into it. Right? And then something comes up in your hip and you're like, okay, I got to start pulling apart my hip. I got to go 6 directions in there. Like, number one, like, let's look for some length on that leg. Open it up this way, like, okay. Try and open that space up and then pick some other directions. Oh, I want a wider hip. I got to let this come out. I got to feel like it's drifting out away, right? Well, I need wider hips on both sides. I might as well do both sides, right? Let them open themselves up. Feel the hips getting wider, and then feel them going front to back, right? Feel them expanding in this direction. Get yourself as much space in those hips as possible. And if when you're doing that, something's got to move and you got to, that thing in my hip. Oh, okay, it's got to move. It's got to do this thing. All right, it's moving. All right. Oh, there it goes down my leg. Okay. Ooh. Wow. That was something, wasn't it? Cool. What's my natural breathing rhythm? Sounds like my little girl just escaped the bathtub. So something like that gives you a few strategies to start working on and playing around with, ones that have been very effective for me. And that's why I'm passing them on. It's not to say that these are necessarily the best strategies or the best strategies for you. They are just ones that have worked out very well for me. And I am a firm believer that when you start getting into these practices, seek out different kinds of knowledge and find the stuff that works best for you. In the Tai Chi world, that usually comes down to like visualizations or techniques. If they say, be like water, like Bruce Lee, you can imagine yourself literally as water. But if you're not really a water person, you're more of a rock person, you feel like, and you've just got that sort of energy, a little more rockish, a little more mountainous than liquidy water. Go with it. And that's kind of another way of getting me around to the second to last strategy or thing I want to touch on for tonight. So the last standing there that I did was I allowed myself to move, and I actually allowed myself to move fairly dramatically because, I found something that was pretty dramatic in my system. It needed to move. It couldn't just do a little thing. It needed to stretch and move out, and I needed to roll through that, feel that, and then let it sink back down. But I let it move me in such a way that I could recover it. I could circle it, do that Tai Chi circle thing, and return myself to my standing meditation and then just go, wow, cool. And there's a couple of things in that. One, having the curiosity to explore what's going on in your body, feel it out, find different things, and even like, start finding icky things, stuff you need to work on. And it's like, they don't necessarily feel great when you start digging into them. But when they start moving and they start going through your system and you're like, okay, I'm getting rid of that. I'm healing that. Having that curiosity about it is really cool, because you've always got stuff to explore and dig things out and find things, and you have your body move in unique and interesting ways that can be a lot of fun to explore if you develop the right mindset for it. And also in that is when you get yourself back, like the way you get yourself back is, into something like your static posture after doing that and technically failing your standing practice, is by not being hard on yourself. Like, don't ever be hard on yourself with this stuff. It is a soft martial art. Qigong is a soft practice. And a lot of that softness comes from our mental state of being soft, including to ourselves, being kind to ourselves about it. We didn't fail. Actually, we found something really cool and we dealt with that thing and we returned to our practice. Our practice brought us some new information, a new thing to try out, a new way to move, a new avenue to explore, and possibly a new gross thing in our hip joint that we've got to like work out. But man, once we work it out, it's going to be great. So having that soft attitude towards it and not failing, quote unquote. But yeah, just being really kind to yourself. And if these things happen, let them happen. Right? There is a spontaneous side to this. And you haven't failed your standing practice if you have to move. But if you have set yourself like a time limit and you have to move, go, okay, and keep that moving. Let it slow itself back down. Come back to your, nice centered standing position, and then just keep going. And when your 10-minute timer's up, your 10-minute timer's up. Right? And, some days you won't move at all. Other days you'll barely be able to stand still. It kind of depends on where you are that day. And overall, over time, as things improve, you will get more and more still. And the way you get more and more still is by allowing yourself to move. Yeah, it's probably one of those Tai Chi things, when going left, think right. Same sort of concept, really, or yin and yang, maybe, as they transform. One thing that I always tell my students is remember to smile. I blurt it out every once in a while in class. I encourage anyone in my class to blurt out, remember to smile, anytime they forget. Because if they have forgotten, chances are the student next to them has also forgotten. And, I don't do that when I'm down in my basement hanging out, practicing by myself. But, a technique you could use is wherever your standing place is. Oh, I didn't mention that as a tip. Have a place you stand. But, maybe eye height right in front of you, right on a, recipe card or something like that, piece of paper, post it on the wall, smile. So you can be hanging out there. Oh, my shoulder, my shoulder, my shoulder. Open your eyes. Oh, yeah. Smile. My shoulder, my shoulder, yay. Yeah, and all right, one more. It's probably going to take you a little while to get to it. But when you start getting, I'm going to say probably into the 10-minute range, where you can start holding 10-minute standing meditation, horse stance stuff in this medium stance, you are going to get the shakes and the bounces. And your legs are just going to start popping you up and down. And maybe not, but I haven't myself or met anyone or had a student who has not gone through this particular phase. And it will change speeds on you, and it will speed up, and you'll be like, and maybe it'll calm down a little bit, and you'll maybe bounce a little bit more, and then you'll go, and it'll speed up, and it'll change, and it'll do all sorts of funky stuff. Let it do that too. Don't resist it. At least not always. You may get to a point where you want to start trying to level it off, where you start trying to consciously calm it down, slow it down. That's going to be the goal overall on that one. Again, go back to using your breathing rhythm to slow down your nervous system. But yeah, let the bounces happen. Let them shake stuff out. Like, you're going to bounce. You're going to get tired because it's firing your muscles like crazy. You might end up with, like flop sweat and a pool around you, just a wet floor. And you're like, but man, when it calms down and you start hitting that just really serene, it's all finally calmed down. And hang out there for the rest of your timed session, or if you're not timing it, just hang out there in that space as long as you can when it finally stops. And your system achieves a fine point of balance where it could pop up or drop down. All right. There we go. Tips and tricks, strategies for trying to extend your standing meditation practice, make your standing meditation practice better, make it easier, get more gains, so basically, yeah, pay attention to getting yourself into the right posture. Whatever your teacher has taught you as a particular posture, I have my things I look for when I teach with my students. There are different styles of horse stance and hugging a tree and basic stances, depending on your teacher. So just do what your teacher says in terms of that. It's the jumping off point for it. From there, make sure you allow yourself some movement. Don't give up, don't drop stuff, but allow things to change. Allowing your mind to change is probably, in a way, the most fundamental skill of this. We want to inhabit new bodies, change our perception of our bodies. So we need to allow our mind to change and change about the way and shape we hold things. 2, breathe. Establish a breathing rhythm. I use a metronome or a clock. But if you play music in the background that's got a beat to it, just count the beat. However you want to do it. see if you can maintain that breathing rhythm above all else. Then we did the 6 directions. So that is a way I use to scan all of my joints, head to toe, and open them all up to give myself space. I use it as a reset if my mind wanders, or if I need to work on a specific area or joint that is causing me problems. I spend a lot of time working the 6 directions in the joint. Allow yourself to move and return to what your starting position was, even if it is a dramatic thing, because we are not going to be hard on ourselves. If we fail, we're going to fail smooth. Yeah. If I got to move that hip, and it's just like, go all matrixy with it, whatever. Yeah. Nice and smooth. And return back to my standing position and go, cool. Open my eyes, see that little thing written in front of me, smile. Yeah. That happened. And then finish up my practice. Right, this is another one. Making sure we always do a nice smooth transition out of this. Even if our legs are shaking, we're going, right? And try and return to that still point afterwards. Right? Trying to make as smooth a transition out of their standing meditation practice and your daily life. We want to try and carry as much of this into our daily life as possible. And yeah, lastly, if you get the shakes, don't worry. They're totally natural. Everybody gets them. Everyone I've met or taught has had them. And it can be kind of fun, kind of cool, a bit of a workout, a lot of a workout, but let the shakes happen. Just let them go. Shake yourself out. Return to still. And there's a lot of people spending a bunch of time on those rebounders, to do lymphatic drainage. You don't even need a rebounder. You just need to stand in one spot for like 10 minutes and your legs are going to do this for free. And remember to smile. So I hope that helps your practice. If you got any questions, want any more stuff like this, fire it in the comments. This video will go live right after this. You can fire them in the comments there. Also in your comments, write down how you're doing with your standing meditation, any plateaus you hit, breakthroughs, share it with the community, all that sort of stuff. As always, thanks for joining me, and we will see you next Thursday. I'm not sure what we're going to be talking about. I usually only decide about 2 minutes before hitting the go live button. So if you got anything particular you want to see or suggest, let me know that too. Have yourself a wonderful evening. Good night.